morning. Welcome to Hardin County Commissioners Court. Today is Monday, September 12, 2016, and we're here today for a special meeting regarding two items that require a public hearing. This time the meeting will be called to order. And if everyone will please rise for the invocation delivered by Dana Hogg, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Father, we thank you for allowing us to come here today freely, Lord, in a safe zone, Lord. We pray for those who are not in such a safe place, Lord, that you'll protect them and guide them. Dear Lord, we thank you for our commissioners here this morning, that you'll give them the wisdom to make the proper decisions for our county, Lord. Pray for all the people that are here. Pray that you'll protect them as they go about their different ways. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Hogg. Item number 3 is conduct public hearing to discuss recommended changes to the proposed fiscal year 2017 Hardin County budget. And we have a list of changes that have been provided to us by the auditor. Should be the first item behind your agenda. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Gore, and if you wouldn't mind, could you just stop after each fund, and let's make sure if there are any questions, we address them at that time, since there's 4 pages?
Yes, sir.
All right.
I would like to start with the revenue, if that's okay, and so it's on this page where it says changes in the net taxable value and breakdown of the total tax rate. If we can start there, and then we'll work towards the expenditures.
Thank you.
On August 11th, 2016, we received information from the appraisal district regarding additional taxable values due to the $19,953,879 of the protested values being finalized. At the time the proposed budget was filed, there was $30,748,110 in property values under protest. These protested property values were finalized after the tax roll was certified on July the 21st, 2016. Therefore, the $19,953,879 is not included in the certified values, but will be included in the calculations for the net taxable values for budget purposes. Due to this information, we increased the net taxable value from $2,901,432,487 on the proposed budget to $2,921,366 on the final budget presented today in Commissioners Court. This is an increase in the total net taxable value of $19,953,879, which generates an additional $114,975 in tax revenue. At the collection rate of 99%, it will increase the budgeted tax revenue by $113,828. The proposed budget stated in the tax revenue increase statement that the budget will raise more revenue from property taxes than previous year by an amount of $227,790, which is a 1.41% increase. In the budget that's presented today, due to the changes in the net taxable value, the statement now states $342,765 in more revenue from property taxes than previous year, which is a 2.12% increase. Changes was also made to the proposed budget regarding the breakdown of the total tax revenue among the various funds. These changes are: the general fund, the proposed budget was .471102. The budget today presented is .471820. The jury fund, the proposed was .018053. Today it's .017930. The road and bridge is .075351. And today it's .074836. The interest in sinking is .011694. And today it's .011614. Those are the changes that are part of the changes that are in the revenue from the proposed to the budget today. Is there any questions? Okay, now we can go to the changes on this sheet. We just discussed the revenue side on the ad valorem tax revenue. The final budget is $13,357,543. That's an increase of $113,828. The only other revenue that was changed from the proposed budget is we added the health department certification classes revenue, and it's also offset in the expenditure side later. We will discuss that, but the amount is, the final budget, it was not in the proposed budget, and the final budget is $5,800. And that's all. The total increase in revenue was $119,628. Is there any questions there? Okay, so we'll start with our expenditures and our changes. And as the judge mentioned, I will pause after each department if there's any questions. Okay, the first expenditure is the county judge health insurance. In the final budget is $19,195. That's an increase of $9,597. The Commissioner's Court Department, the MHMR and Life Resources, the final budget is $37,000. That's an increase of $4,450. Commissioner's Court telephone expense, the final budget is $68,700, and that's a decrease of $6,300. Commissioner's Court insurance, general liability, property insurance is, the final budget is $217,718, and that's a decrease of $7,282. The total expenditure changes in Commissioner's Court Department is a decrease of $9,132.
Any questions so far?
Okay. The county clerk, the internet services, the final budget is $1,800. That's an increase of $1,800. The floodplains, we added the auto allowance. The final budget is $500. That's an increase of $500. We decreased in the line item of the auto notes. The final budget is $5,100, and that's a decrease of $500. So there's no change in the total expenditures in the fund planes.
On that, are we adding the auto allowance or removing it?
The reason is the vehicle won't be here till sometime in November, so we had to keep paying that person an auto allowance, but we deducted it from the auto note
Okay.
for the month of October.
The district clerk's department, we added a full-time clerk. The final budget is $138,736 for her salaries. That's an increase of the $25,459, which is adding that part-time person to a full-time. We removed the part-time clerk from the proposed budget, and that's a decrease of $15,276. The FICA taxes, the final budget is $18,647, and that's an increase of $779. Health insurance, the final budget is $68,596. That's an increase of $9,597. The retirement, the final budget is $34,246, and that's an increase of $1,431. The workers' comp in the final budget is $666, and that's an increase of $28. The unemployment is $263, and that's an increase of $16. The dental insurance is $3,263, and that's an increase of $617. Life insurance, the final budget is $395, and that's an increase of $60. Supplemental death, the final budget is $561, that's an increase of $23. And the total expenditure changes for the district clerk is a total of $22,734 increase, and that is all pertaining to changing that part-time person to a full-time position. Okay, JP2, the cable internet line item, the final budget is $2,367, and that's an increase of $2,367. JP4 internet service, the final budget is $583. That's an increase of $583. JP5, the internet service, is a final budget of $1,070, and that's an increase of $1,070. JP6 internet service, the final budget is $480, and that's an increase of $480.
And if I could stop you for just a minute, all four of those department increases are because we moved their telephone line item into the Commissioner's Court budget and didn't realize they were paying cable and internet out of that line item, so we had to put a line item in their budget to cover that. That's why we have a reduction from the Commissioner's Court budget and an increase in these four budgets.
I guess my question here would be, how come there's such a great difference in the amount? Is it the amount of terminals they have, or?
Well, when you look at JP2 and JP5, they're on Time Warner, who apparently charge us more than the service providers that JP4 and JP6 are on. I think JP4 is on CMA cable. They may be able to negotiate a better rate with them. We do have a government rate through Time Warner Cable, and Judge Brewer is asking to be addressed.
You and I discussed recently about doing away with my cable. I don't use cable in my office, and it's just a waste of money. So I'd like to try to take that off, and that'll help just a little bit. I don't know, it's not about $60 or $70 a month, but that's still money
Okay.
being wasted.
Yeah, and I think Angela told me yesterday or Saturday that JP5 had cut out their cable, so that's gonna be another reason that there's a difference. Hers is lower than the rest of them, or lower than JP2's, and when he reduces his cable, those should end up being closer together.
Yeah, I guess my observation is that unless there's something vastly different, all the internet services should basically be the same.
Depends on the provider. Charles, will you still have internet through Time Warner?
I'll still have internet. That's the only internet provider out there is Time Warner.
You can't get through AT&T?
Don't go out that far.
Okay.
Or there's no one like HughesNet, or,
You don't want that? That's garbage.
well, I don't know what we want, but there's quite a difference between $2,300 and $583.
I know in order to be able to connect to Hill Country and whenever they get on net data, they have to be able to have a certain amount of upload and download speed, so that's gonna be part of it as well, I would imagine. But we can check into that and see if we can cut that out anymore.
I live out in the country and I got AT&T Wi-Fi or something, and it's a lot cheaper than this.
That's because 421 was built up.
Yeah.
They hadn't reached North Silsbee yet.
It hadn't reached North Silver.
It hadn't.
Well, they told me it'd reach anywhere on Earth, but anyway. Okay, that's all.
Thank you.
Okay, in the purchasing department, the salaries for the appointed, the director, purchasing director, the final budget is $47,500. That's a decrease of $1,250. The FICA taxes, the final budget is $7,554, and that's a decrease of $95. The retirement is the final budget $13,873, and that's a decrease of $176. Workers' comp is $270, and that's a decrease of $4. Unemployment's $149, and that's a decrease of $1. Supplemental death is $228, and that's a decrease of $2. And the total expenditures changes in the purchasing department is $1,528, and that all pertains to reducing the purchasing director's salary.
And that change is a decrease.
Decrease, yes, sir.
Thank you, Misty. Appreciate you.
Okay, Constable 4, we added a wireless data. The final budget is $460, that's an increase of $460. We removed the equipment expense, that's a decrease of $460. So the total expenditure changes for Constable 4 is a 0. The Sheriff's Department, the Sheriff's elected officials, the final budget is $92,458. That's an increase of $6,111. The sheriff deputies, the total salaries for the deputies is $1,427,167, and that's an increase of $3,003. And the reason that that's an increase is there was some level pay and certificate pay for about 4 or 5 deputies that had to be adjusted. The FICA taxes is $145,081, and that's an increase of $790. The retirement is $265,947, and that's an increase of $1,280. Workers' comp is $25,302, and that's an increase of $145. Unemployment is $2,707, and that's an increase of $6. Supplemental death is $4,355, and that's an increase of $21. Wireless phone is $3,600, and that's an increase of $1,200. And so the total expenditure changes for the sheriff department is $12,556 increase.
Angela, on the salaries deputy line item, we also had an increase for the new deputy that was hired in at a different rate level, right?
That is correct.
So
and
that's included in there, okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
If we have questions on something, do we wait to the end or go?
Right now, on this particular department, before we move on to the next department?
Yes, sir. I don't guess this question is specifically addressed to you, but anybody else on the court that might could, answer for me, or yourself, or whoever. Whenever we started, the budget process and done the, survey on the sheriff's salary, excuse me, and saw that it was higher than, other counties that was equal to ours in the same budget. What's the difference now and then? Why are we increasing it?
We had left the current sheriff's pay at where it is for the last 3 months of this budget year, or the first 3 months of the next budget year, the last 3 months of this calendar year, and reduced it down to the same as mine, which is 84,095. Then after some discussion, and I think I had a recommendation from Commissioner Kirkendall after you talked to Chief Davis, who agreed to leave that salary at, he asked if we would bump the salary back up to the 92,458, and he would agree to leave it frozen there for at least the next few years. And I agreed to go ahead and put that back in, and of course we can discuss that now, to make sure that there is a consensus on the court to keep that in there.
I would be for leaving it as it is in the proposed budget.
I'm for,
Kirkendall?
leaving it at 92,458. I think changing it after the election has occurred sends a wrong message, and, so I'm for leaving it 92,458. When Chief Davis and I did talk, and, he talked about it, he said, you know, there may be another viable option such as freezing the pay, and that made sense to me. Of course, we haven't gotten to that place, but I mean, that was a recommendation, that's what I passed on to the judge. And so, I don't think it's, in my opinion, it's not, right to change it after the people, 6 people filed for that office, and they ran under that current budget, and I think if
So
we're
with that
gonna
in
change
mind,
it-
we should never give him a raise, because he ran for that salary, so he should never get a raise,
That's
if you
not-
use that.
That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying to change it after you have a candidate who's gonna be elected in November. I don't agree with that.
And as I took responsibility during the budget workshop when that came up, when that came up, I'll take responsibility again. That is something I wish that I had put out there, you know, back in January when we first decided or realized that TAC was going to be doing a salary survey. I wish I had put that out there, but I didn't. And therefore, that's the reason I'm for leaving it back, or putting it back to the original rate of 92,458, based on the comment. And Chief Davis has not made this comment to me, but he did to Commissioner Kirkendall that he would agree to leave it frozen there for the next few years.
I can go along with that if we leave it frozen until it equalizes out with the county judge's salary.
That's something we'll just have to address each year going forward.
Well, I'm saying if this court agrees to that,
Yes, sir.
okay.
My problem with it is, and it's not necessarily that I don't agree or disagree that he should make that salary, is, I should think if we're gonna add money back into the budget for one department, if another department had requested it, such as Glenda's, requesting, you know, she had $5,000 that was on top of hers that was there already, that was taken out. How can we do that and not give that back to her? I mean, when you look at something that we decided on in the proposed budget as being fair, now it's suddenly becoming unfair to that department. And I bring her because hers comes to mind. And I remember taking the $5,000 out of her budget. I could see doing it out, and I would probably be in favor of doing that if we would give her money back.
Well, you're talking about increasing 3 people's pay that are not being reduced.
Right.
If you do that.
But that was in her budget, and it was in her
That's
budget
not-
prior
It's
to.
just not how it works, though. I mean, that, if you go back and look at the sheriff's budget, there's an amount in there for a major, but when the new major comes in, he doesn't automatically make that amount. And it'll go down, but we can't adjust that now because we don't know who that person will be and what level certificate pay and, longevity that they will be whenever they're hired into that position is, depending on whether it's a new person or somebody who's already got years of service in the department. So we had to leave that budgeted at the full amount.
Well, Judge, under that logic, well, we could say that the sheriff, he's coming in, he's new. Just like a major, just like another employee coming in is new. So why should he start at the top?
Well, the comment that was made to me by several other elected officials is that that's what's always happened in the past. Mr. Partham?
The thing is, Glenda's department is a little bit different than what they come in, they get paid based on their status. Glenda doesn't have that opportunity. So I see that you're treating the sheriff's department one way with the salary arrangement with everybody, and then treating all the other departments differently.
Well, we're not gonna pit employees against each other. And, one, with the specialized training a deputy gets, the fact that, they're on the side of the road conducting, traffic stops, they're putting their life in harm's way of doing drug busts, they have to wear a sidearm in order to conduct their job. I think there is a difference. And I think the way that you get good, quality, trained, professional law enforcement officers is to compete with the region. And so I support the current pay status that we have for the sheriff's department and wish we could do more.
And that is something that we, one moment, that is something we discussed in the budget workshop back in July, and this court agreed that that's something that, was put into place back in 2000 or 2001, and we agree we're gonna stick with that, and that's unanimous consensus on that.
That's not what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get at is, if you basically have a department that brings in a person, in the sheriff's department, they come in based upon those pay scales. The other departments, when they have a new person coming in, they have to come in at the set salary at that point in their budget, or else they lose it. So you're forcing the people in those departments to bring in people, pay them a higher amount than they may want to, in the hope that they can build them up. But if they start them at a lower amount, you take it away from them.
That's not necessarily true, Larry. We do let people bring them in at a lower, and then 90 days later, if they pan out, come back to a different salary.
I've seen it, Glenda's, chief deputy has never gotten back up to the level that the one that left was at.
We have to remember that we're just stewards of the people's money. And there are a lot of needs and concerns this county has. And we have to do what's right and ethical for the employees, but also the taxpayers. And I refuse and reject the idea of pitting employees against each other. And that I think every department head fights equally hard for their employees. And at the end of the day, there are differences. For instance, if a road and bridge employee is called out on a holiday, their pay is different than if someone else gets called out. And the reason is because they may have to leave Christmas morning like my employees did and have to go cut trees off of the road because of a storm. In order to incentivize them to go out and do that for the public, it is different. And in that case, we have discriminated based on road and bridge employees being called out on a holiday. But it is legal to do that. But that doesn't mean we're pitting road and bridge against sheriff's office. Doesn't mean that we're pitting road and bridge against an employee who works in the courthouse. Each office functions differently, and what's required is differently, even if the hours are the same. And so it is different. And when you're talking about an elected official, if this county is going to take a policy to reduce the pay of an elected official each time there's a vacancy, it just needs to be made public. But I can't think of any elected official or auditor who took a pay cut from the previous person who held the position. And so to do that now with the sheriff's office, to me, doesn't make sense. I understand the salary study, and if things would have happened differently, I might be at peace with it. But to me, and for my standards, not speaking for anybody else on the court, it's not integrity for me to reduce the sheriff's pay after we've progressed this far. But I reject the notion of trying to pit a clerk against a sheriff in the pay, and I would like to move on from this.
All right, so let's go back to this item number 1 in the Sheriff's Department budget to increase the elected official line item to $6,111. Commissioner Precinct 1 is against it. Commissioner Precinct 2 is for it. Commissioner Precinct 3 is,
I'm for it if we got an agreement with the sheriff that, or agreement with the court, that we will freeze it for a number of years to let these two salaries get even.
Commissioner Precinct 4.
I'm against it, only because of what I said. I don't think it's right to take money out of another department's budget, like we did out of the sheriff's budget, and then give it back to one department, but not give it back to that other department. And I'm not pitting any employees against any employees. I'm just saying, all right, we removed it from her budget and told her the reason why. We removed it from the sheriff's department budget and gave a reason why. But now we're giving it back to one and not the other. And I don't think that's fair, so I'm against it.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I'm for it. So that increase in the sheriff's office budget of $12,556 will remain. If we can move on to juvenile detention.
Yes, sir. Juvenile detention internet service, final budget's $239, and an increase of $239. Juvenile detention miscellaneous, final budget is $2,261, and it's a decrease of $239. So the overall total expenditures in juvenile is $0. Health department, the salaries appointed personnel is a decrease of $2,476. We added salaries for a director. The final budget's $22,277, and that's an increase of $22,277. The salaries for other, the final budget is $18,500. That's a decrease of $10,283. FICA taxes, $3,120. That's an increase of $728. Health insurance, the final budget is $4,896. That's a decrease of $4,126. Retirement, the final budget is $5,729, and that's an increase of $1,337. Workers' comp is $114. That's an increase of $46. Unemployment is $61. That's an increase of $14. Dental is $253. That's a decrease of $148. Life insurance is $33. That's a decrease of $24. Supplemental death is $114. That's an increase of $42. Office supplies is at $100 in the final budget. That's a decrease of $7,620. We added a line item medical supplies in the final budget is $1,700. That's an increase of $1,700. We added an wireless data in the final budget is $4,800. That's an increase of $4,800. We added a cable internet that's $750. That's an increase of $750. Travel and training, the final budget $670. That's an increase of $570. Equipment expense / lease, the final budget is $960. That's a decrease of $40. Excuse me. That's a decrease of $40. We added a line item for a computer expense. The final budget is $863, and that's an increase of $863. In the miscellaneous line item, the final budget is $1,500. That's a decrease of $11,950. So the overall expenditures changed for the health department is a decrease of $3,540. And the reason for so many changes in the health department in the general fund is due to the change in the director, and so therefore the budget was adjusted.
There's also some items that the grant is covering, so we reduced like office supplies and other items the grant's not gonna cover that the county's gonna pick up,
That's correct.
which were the smaller items.
I have
Any
a
other
question.
questions? Yes, sir.
On the wireless data
Mm-hmm.
and internet, is that covered by the grant?
It used to be, but now the county's covering that, and those are some smaller items that the county is gonna pick up while the grant picks up that large item of office supplies, the $7,620.
Okay, and
And that was a recommendation by Dr. Wimberg and Shelley Dilbeck to do that.
okay, so I may have missed something, but why is why are we at 4,800 on wireless data? How come that's so expensive? Does anybody know?
I'm thinking. That, it's for air cards. How many do they have?
I would have to check.
I would like to know.
Or is that part of their cell phone, the wireless data? Because I think we had to break up some of the cell phone expense where the grant pays for the phone and the county pays for the data. And they also have air cards to go with their laptops out in the field.
Okay.
And I think that was the reason that increased.
Okay.
We can get a better explanation for you, though, if you like.
No,
But if I
just,
remember right, I think that's what it is. And Misty's shaking her head, yes, that's what happened.
okay, that's good.
Thank you, Misty. All right, if we can move, is there any further questions on the health department? Okay, if we'll move on to the office supplies. I'm sorry, health department certification classes.
Okay, this is a new program that was implemented this current fiscal year, and so we're adding a budget for the next fiscal year, and it's not in the proposed budget. The health department certification classes, the office supplies, the final budget is $1,030. That's an increase of $1,030. The health department certification classes, wireless data, the final budget is $420, and that's an increase of $420. The travel and training, $1,500, increase $1,500. Equipment expense, $350, increase $350. The fees expenditures, $2,500, increase $2,500. And so the total expenditure change for the health department certification classes is $5,800. And this is the part that the revenue at the beginning of our conversation will offset. We have an amount of revenue is equal to the amount of expenditures. So the
Does that
grant.
make sense? Okay.
The grand total expenditure changes is $42,787 from the proposed budget to the budget that's presented today. So just to recap, the total expenditure changes from the proposed budget to today is $42,787. We needed, the amount of fund balance to balance the proposed budget was $76,841. So that's a subtotal of $119,628. And so we subtract the total revenues that was increased from the proposed budget to the final budget was a total of $119,620. So the general fund is balanced. These changes balance the fiscal year 2017 budget without using a fund balance. The total revenue of the entire general fund is $15,082,353, and the total expenditures is $15,082,350. So therefore, we did not need to go into fund balance to balance this budget.
That completes the general fund. Are there any questions or comments regarding that before we move on to the last few funds? Any comments from the public? Ms. Hogg?
Do you have the hourly rate on our clerk available?
The one that we changed from part-time to full-time? No, this is the proposed. Sorry, that still has the, part-time in it. $12.24.
That's a part-time pay.
Okay,
It's $13.16.
13.
So all those changes under the district clerk will have to be revised?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the, what we've presented so far? We'll move on to the next fund, which is a new fund.
Yes, sir. This is the election, equipment rentals. We're creating a new fund, 012, and the final budget is $8,550. That's an increase of $8,550 for the revenue. We offset the revenue with expenditures, for equipment repairs and maintenance for $8,550. That's an increase of $8,550. What this is a new fund set up to, we have rental income that comes in from various entities that rent the election equipment, and we're, putting it in a separate fund so it can, we can,
Be kept up with better.
correct.
Yes, ma'am.
The county attorney, this is also a new fund for this new fiscal year. The county attorney pretrial diversion fund is 020. The revenue is $11,250. That's an increase of $11,250. The county attorney pretrial diversion expenditures is office supplies is $2,500. That's an increase of $2,500. Training materials increased. Training materials is $1,500. That's an increase of $1,500. Office equipment, $6,500. That's an increase of $6,500. Miscellaneous expenditures is $750. That's an increase of $750. So the total expenditures for the county attorney pretrial diversion fund is $11,250. And then our last change is with the court security fees fund, Fund 164. The expenditures, the courthouse security, the final budget is $25,985. That's a decrease of $2,283. And we added a new line item, justice court building security. Final budget is $2,283, and that's an increase of $2,283. So the total expenditures changes for the court security fees is 0.
Thank you, Angela.
You're welcome.
So we will need to go back and make a revision to the district clerk budget to change that hourly amount,
Yes, sir.
which means that can't do it in the next 20 minutes. We'll have to table that item in the regular agenda as far as adopting the budget, because we won't have that ready.
Is that up or down?
It'll increase it. It's from 12 what an hour to 13?
12.24 to 13.16.
13.16, yeah. So it'll
Can
be an
we-
increase.
Can we approve it with the amended, just the one amended line item?
If you, like, offset it within, like, that insurance line item in the
If
commissioner's
everyone just
court.
says that they're okay with the increase in the hourly rate and we'll provide the figures later, is that okay to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, with the provision that we will offset it with the, in the commissioner's court, and that insurance line item will reduce that amount and increase that amount for the
Yeah, I
district
think we
clerk.
could do that.
Okay.
As I told y'all earlier, I used the line item in the commissioner's court budget to balance the budget. The general liability, law enforcement, and property insurance, based on the history and what Debbie Mendesabel was told by TAC as far as our renewal. We don't expect an increase there, so we can use a little bit more of that money to balance the budget by increasing that pay rate.
Candace
That's
is gonna
okay
go
with the court.
calculate it,
Okay,
so
Thank
we'll
you.
have that amount.
thank you very much.
And
Any other,
Have all the
yes, sir?
contested appraisals been settled?
No, sir. I talked to Alex over the weekend, and he said that they're meeting again tomorrow.
Okay, so
To
we
discuss more of
possibly
it.
may still pick up a little revenue.
He expects that we will. It won't be a whole lot, but he expects we should pick up a little more than his original forecast was 23 million, and the information we got from him that you presented a while ago was 19 million and something.
Correct.
He still feels like we're gonna end up around the 23 million as far as the final values on those protested.
That's not
Properties.
4 million, that'd be $20,000 or so.
Right.
So we're talking about nickels and dimes here in this thing. Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments? Recommendations? Anyone in the audience? All right, if there's nothing more on item number 3, we'll move on to number 4. Item number 4, conduct public hearing to consider a plan for District Clerk's Technology Fund for the preservation and restoration of District Clerk's records. Ms. Hogg, how are you this morning? Probably should have done this first, I apologize.
Yes, and I probably should have asked, because we have a jury and criminal court going on, so I'll try to make this quick. Does everyone have a copy of the plan, or?
Yes, ma'am, and you just made a couple of minor changes, is that right?
It's basically the same. I've just, I guess, explained it a little differently than maybe some clerks have in the past, but
Okay.
basically the same government code.
If you'd like to go through it real quick, and then we can ask you any questions.
Well, this is, a fee that's already in place,
Yes, ma'am.
nothing new.
What is the current fee?
It's $10.
Okay,
It will change in, I believe, 2019, it will drop to $5. But it is to be used for the preservation and restoration of the District Court Records Archive. And I've explained here a little bit about the purpose of the digital capture. We've got storage, retention, management of the archive records. They're in our office and the ones across the street as well. We've currently, the second floor holds over 400 books and many files and exhibits that are related to civil and criminal matters. When we store criminal and files over in the climate-controlled storage unit at Stratton, and we have a sizable amount across the street at the annex. Our permanent records are all cases that are 1950 or earlier. Those are permanent. We can scan them, but we cannot destroy them. We're in the process of scanning some old administrative files right now. Those are the quickest for us to scan and do away with. And then we plan on bringing files back to scan that can be destroyed because of their retention has been met. Let's see.
I got a question, Dana.
Okay.
You said, the fee is being reduced in 2019?
Yes, I think on page 4 is the government code, and you'll see subsection B, September 1st of 2019, they show that it will change to $5.
And that's a state mandate?
Yes.
Okay, my
Of course,
question.
they you
may-
never could change it in legislation.
well, I think we can set it at any amount, $5 or below, is that, Commissioner's Court sets it, but it can't go over $5, is that the way I read that?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
And right now, we've set it, but it can't go over $10.
correct.
Okay.
And so, my question is, in order to preserve these documents, has the price been reduced? That we get at a cheaper rate that the state would mandate us on to knock it down by $5?
Not
I
sure.
think
that
what,
clear?
I think what it is they had set a rate initially, and it was gonna take a lot of time because all the records are old. And I think the goal of the state was that by 2019, all of the old records would be stored or scanned or however they were gonna be retained. And then the rate would come down because all you'd have to do is your current year to year. If I'm not mistaken, is that correct?
That's
You
my
think we'll meet
understanding as
that goal?
well.
You think we'll meet that goal? So it's
Not
Not
possible.
very far off, that's 3 years, so
And
it's
the thing
possible.
I'm trying to get in public record is, it looks like another unfunded mandate from the state, that the state's reducing the amount of money coming to the counties, and it will directly impact the citizens of Hardin County, because they'll have to pick up the expense the state is now not meeting to preserve district records, which is a state function.
But I think the clerks associations are working on the legislature to maybe have that foresight that $5 reduction is gonna hurt us.
We're
Amen.
hoping it
But-
changes.
We can
That's
certainly
good.
help on that.
Good deal. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding item number 4? Anyone from the audience? This is an item that will require Commissioners Court action, and it'll be on our September 26th agenda. And that'll give us time to research this and see if there's any more questions we need to come up and answer before we take action. Is there anything further regarding number 4? I'd like to remind everybody about the sign-in sheet. If y'all didn't sign in, please sign in on the sign-in sheet. Is it up here? If there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Kirkendall and a second by Commissioner Roberts to adjourn. Commissioners Court is in recess until 10 a.m.
Recess or adjourn?
We're adjourned and in recess till 10 a.m.
You're speaking like a judge, man.
Anyway, sorry.
I'm just a commissioner.
I'm okay on doing my raise.